We are back for another episode, and I also, before we get started, want to say that I'm going to Beyonce tonight, and I want everyone to celebrate that tonight is Beyonce Day.
You're like, my hair looks good, I'm aware of it, it's not just for this podcast.
It's because I get to go to the Beyonce concert tonight, so maybe next week I'll tell you about it if you listen to our podcast enough, but I am super excited for that, so I was going to share that with everyone. But we're getting here. Do regionals start today? Are they games today?
Tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. So we are recording right before regionals get started. Also, shout out. We're going to talk a lot about some of our relationships at the Division I level, but shout out to my alma mater, WashU, which is ranked 10 at the Division III level, and is also starting their postseason journey. So that's exciting. Everyone's kind of starting postseason together. But we wanted to just kind of talk through, obviously, the idea of OGX is really this concept of player development, really centered on data and the sort of insights and iterations that we have learned from having access to data and continuing to get access to more data and learn more. And we've had the opportunity to really test that with our partners and sort of our relationships at the collegiate level. And so we wanted to just take this opportunity to kind of celebrate some of the successes that those different relationships have had. We've had an opportunity to watch coaches through kind of their whole journey implementing this and what that has meant for them and the impact they've had on athletes and how much change we've seen in those athletes. We've had the opportunity to work with athletes who are on the highest stage right now performing, who trained with us their whole journey and who are, come back each summer and are continuing to be in that system with us. And we have athletes who we just got the opportunity, for whatever reason, they felt like they needed a different approach, or they came to us for the summer and they were able to kind of transform themselves because of that. And then we have coaches who worked with us, who, either did short or longer stints with us and then went into the collegiate game and are having their impact there. So just give this opportunity to kind of go through some of those examples and really celebrate these people who I think it's kind of magic to watch some of the ways that they're able to implement some of this player development. And so I think I'm gonna kick it to you, Ashley, if you want to pick who in that path you want to start with to kind of chat and celebrate. And obviously we probably aren't going to mention everyone and we like to kind of shout out everyone that has done this, but maybe just a couple key examples that you want to start with.
Sure. I'm going to start general before going through some very particular programs that have had a big impact on me personally this year, and then certainly on OGX as a whole. But more generally speaking, I just had this conversation with a coach a few days ago. It's I just start reflecting on this at this time of year. It is such an incredible, really privilege from the consulting standpoint, particularly the coaches that we work with on a weekly basis, that we have a little bit more of a connected relationship with. It's a very trusting relationship, right? They are trusting us to see, the ins and outs of the data, some subjective information and context surrounding that, maybe things they wouldn't maybe air out and have to bounce off of someone else. I really take this time, even when schools, their season is ending, maybe even sooner than they thought it would be, or they wanted it to really thank them for that privilege to be able to be alongside of them in this journey. And I think it's really what it is. I don't know if it's unique to softball, if it's unique to women, it's the fact that it's both, but this is consulting relationships are not just XO, we don't, basically our time is up, see you next week, and nothing. There's this there's an investment in each of us, in each other, in OGX, into that program, in OGX. It's connected. There's a sense of real teamwork here. And it just feels like we're partners. So it's powerful is essentially what I'm trying to get at. And, I think along that way, there are schools that are kind of like push through and are able to reach levels of success, and would like to really celebrate them on this podcast. But even underneath of that, what the view that I think sometimes I get to see with coaches, like how much coaches grow in their own journeys at a variety of levels, meaning like they might be early in their coaching journey, they're in their 20s, they're sort of like right in the middle, they may have been coaching for decades already. And to watch coaches like learn, soak in information, like lean on someone else, like question certain things, push through things, it's just, I would say it is equally, as rewarding as seeing athletes go through processes like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's so incredible to be like, wow, look at what you are like coming up with programming wise. Look at what you just saw in that HQ dashboard, knew what you were looking at, what it meant, what you now need to go communicate with that athlete. It's just, what a journey. It's so great to see. So I would just say that's more of my general, I guess, shout out to all of our partners this year and in previous years, because watching their like willingness to dive into that process and their willingness to like push themselves as coaches, I give them so much credit, and it's so cool to be a part of. So I love that part of the consulting piece. I will say this week in particular, like on Sunday during the selection show, I was like, wow, I'm like a proud, like mama, grandma or somebody, because I'm like, I had some tears on Sunday. And there's some particular relationships that drew that out of me. One is obviously Texas A&M, who, I don't know if I really have the right words to express my level of respect, admiration, just, it's quite a place. And we brought this up before. We, have worked with head coach Trisha Forbes, and she was at ASU, and she's a different breed. She's a different breed of a person, let alone as a coach. She is someone that is so smart, so quick, so good, yet hones in on all the gaps of things that can be better. And in a way that is, in a way that is like very healthy, I would say. It's just of like, it's never enough. She pushes herself to a point where it's like, there's got to be new information. Or if I ask myself a question and I don't know the answer, why? Where can I find it? Who's the person that knows the answer? She's so unique from that standpoint. And so, working alongside of her, and I know obviously you two feel the same way because we all have worked alongside of her in different ways. It is, we always say like, man, you're my person, right? Because that soul of a person that is like that is incredibly passionate, so authentic to a degree that it's just like, not my problem if I'm not your cup of tea. I mean, seriously, right? I mean, that is so inspiring. And I love that. And I love that in women, because oftentimes we're like, morph into someone who everyone thinks is nice and sweet. And she is absolutely herself. Herself is an incredible person, an incredible manager. She delegates beautifully, but she knows enough about everything going on to know when there's a gap. And I think that, we have worked really closely. And since her taking the job at A&M, there was like, okay, you get to a new school and you're kind of working with what you're working with. Maybe some athletes come along with you. But man, to be only year 3 and to go into postseason as the number 1 seed. I mean, this isn't like, it's not coincidence. We used to call it we used to text her year 1, the Trisha Ford effect, right? Like Laura, you would always, this is a Trisha Ford effect. And it's really hard for me to really say, like, I wish sometimes it would be wildly inappropriate, but I just would like to like record sometimes some of our weekly calls. I would never do that and like put it on air for the world to hear, because I'm like, do you see how granular this is getting? Do you see the level of detail that we are going for? There is no box unchecked. There is never a week where it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, let's just keep going with this. It is a dissection of every pitcher and every bit of data we can look at and get our hands on in that call. And what are we going to do about it? What is the plan today, tomorrow, the next day? How will we know that's going well? It is not just us on that call. She surrounds herself with the people that will be involved in the execution of that. They are fully in the know. It's just, she's built a powerhouse and it's surrounded by information, right? It's not like I'm the queen bee and whatever I say goes. She is like, no, I will find the right data and information that tells me I'm on the right track. And who are the people that are going to help show me and lead me to that information? It's just incredible. She's amazing. Working with that program and working with her specifically has been honestly the privilege of a lifetime, I would say. And so I called myself a proud grandma because, and I told her this when she was on, when she was on screen being interviewed by Holly Rowe because they're the #1 seed. And I didn't know what to do. I was so excited. I'm sitting there on the damn couch by myself. So I just grabbed my phone and started videotaping it.
Well, then you were and then that was embarrassing. Meanwhile, I did it and sent it to her in a group text.
I was and then the next day I was like, what am I, why was I videoing it? My hands are shaking. I'm like, and I was thinking who is that video for? Myself? I don't know. I just wanted to capture the moment. I wanted to capture the moment because, we've also been in the trenches with her and the program for a long time. So to watch them literally get to the very top of the game. Now, I will say the top of the game is to win a freaking national championship. So let's be clear, we're still working really hard with her and that program to do everything we can on our end to help them get there. But man, that was a moment that I feel like will stick with me for a really long time. And it's not just it'd be amazing no matter what. But we did not just start working with Texas A&M this year. This has been a long journey. For those who don't know this, I feel like if you've listened to any podcast, this has come up so many times. But when we did our original pitch doc in 2019, pre-COVID, when we didn't even know what the hell we were talking about up there, and the fact that we thought we had the audacity that we had to say, let's literally launch a pitching conference. We had no business. And, a few people were coming. And then Trisha Ford, who was at ASU, bought a ticket. And Krista and I joke about this, but we were serious. We're like, let's start paying people to fill the seats because we'll be damned. If
Trisha about canceling it.
Yeah, we're like, there's 20 people. Is that worth it? And then Trisha Ford's coming in. So we're like, pay people, put them in the seats so she doesn't think this is a waste of her time. And that was really the birth of our connection and relationship with her. So I just am, like I said, I am a little bit of a loss for words, and that's not typical for me because it's this mix of emotions of I'm proud of us for what I think we've helped to contribute to that program. I am in awe of her as a human, as a coach, as a manager, as a mom. She juggles so many things.
Yeah. And the best relationships, I think why we go on and on about Trisha wherever she goes, and is that it's really an example of both sides contributing so significantly, which is obviously, the level of information and guidance that our systems and our information have been able to give her and help her in implementing player development is so high. And also, every time we're able to work with her, how much that pushes our systems forward and our ability to deliver better products. And that's really that's what I think is so unique about her, is that it's just as much of an advantage for us to work with her as it is vice versa, because she does ask those questions. So HQ, the platform has been evolving, and changing, and what we're able to pull out of it. And a lot of that has been because Trisha's not afraid at the pitch doc to raise her hand and be like, what is this?
She's like, this shit doesn't make any sense.
Right. Or it doesn't work. Fix it. Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. It's not answering the questions we needed to, or whatever that is. And so it has pushed us at such a pace also. And that's, it's what I think our business does on a daily basis with the three of us in rooms. And, all along the way, that's what we've always done internally. And when we have the opportunity to work with programs externally who equally push us in that way, it's just, it's an amazing opportunity for everyone. And that is growth of the game, right? And that's what we're always talking about. And that's what pushes it forward. And so
put it this way,
been amazing.
HQ, a lot of the evolution of HQ on the college front is directly connected to the work we do with A&M because of how much Trisha will push for what she needs, what we need to be able to see. And I'm like, okay, if HQ can't do that right now, it needs to be able to. But basically, like, Texas A&M it's not like, oh, we're doing all these things for HQ because Texas A&M is number one in the country, and so we're trying to like help satisfy that relationship. Texas A&M is number one in the country because of what I just said, that their commander-in-chief is the person that is like, we got to be able to do this. We got to see this. Well, what's this question? Why doesn't it answer this? And then that's why we're like, great. You're right. You're right. We got
this episode is
like,
going to be called like, Dear Trisha Ford.
Yes,
Dear Trisha.
seriously.
I love you. No, but I think
Trisha,
it's not just about our relationship with her, OGX Trisha.
Amazing.
It's about what she does for this game. And you know what? I often hold a lot of stuff down when it comes to like the announcer world in softball. But I often think like when they talk about Trisha Ford, they'll be like, oh, what she's done for the pitchers and what she's done for that program. No doubt about it. But they talk about her as if she's in the same category as other coaches who have done a good job in their programs. And sometimes, frankly, it drives me insane. It pisses me off because I'm like, if you really knew the data world, to the majority of the announcers, if you knew the data world, she is changing the landscape. She is changing what player development looks like. For all the coaches in college who say like, oh, I'm not doing player development or like there's no time for player development. That's absurd. And you know who is the first person who can speak out to that? The person who's leading the number one team in the nation right now, because she is the one really driving an entirely different world on how to use technology, use data to make decisions, not just on in-game management, which is of course important, but to use that same information to know exactly how to prep in September, October. There are often times where I'm like, she's a model. And that's why I said, like, I want to be able to record our sessions sometimes and like broadcast it, because there are times where I'm like, I'll have a conversation with one coach and they're like, we have to be able to do live. We need them to see live 4 days a week. We've got to do this. What they're driving, the coach is saying it needs to be done. And I'm like, I wish I could show you the Trisha Ford model, because she
come to pitch talk. I got her to talk.
Come to pitch talk, because the
like,
conversation I just had with her,
the Trisha Ford model.
Yeah, she's like, oh no, I'm not worried about that right now. We have plenty of time for that, right? Like, and so there are times where I just think of like, that's what needs to get recognized about her, is that she is the model in my mind in the game right now for true player development, and that's why Texas A&M is number one. So unbelievable. I think, like I said, I cried. I just straight up freaking cried. I knew they were going to be number one because I could like feel it coming out of my heart. Like I just felt like my chest was like pounding. I just like knew it. And I just, man, it's a moment I won't forget. I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of that program. All the coaches she surrounds herself with, her athletes. It's such a short amount of time to have taken a program who's at the bottom of the SEC and now is at the top of the nation. So unbelievable. Can I keep going?
Speaking of the bottom of the SEC, I was like, another big one, obviously, and another one I think we felt emotional about, and I sent messages, was South Carolina, who was predicted this year to be last in the SEC. And is 8 in the country right now. And obviously we had the opportunity to work with that staff when they were at Charlotte, and to kind of continue to be able to support them at South Carolina. So I can let you speak to that, but I think another incredible story of, again, a staff very
also one I cried over
player development. On Sunday. Very committed to player development, and
there's two reasons I think that the South Carolina success story this year really hit home for me. And one is, I mean, for Ashley Chastain Woodard, of course, year number 1 from mid-major Charlotte into the SEC, year number 1 to take a top 8 seed is unfreaking believable. It is unbelievable. And, for those, we have had the opportunity to work with her for a few years at Charlotte. We saw what she was doing at Charlotte. She was starting to like shake some stuff up, right? Like people were like, Charlotte, here they come. Not a coincidence. She is a force. She is a force. Like, don't let that, she, you know, like she is like, looks to be
Southern,
smiling
Southern,
and sweet and, you know, like she's so beautiful, but she is a freaking force in the most beautiful way. And like to transform a program like that so fast is almost just like a near impossibility. So incredible. And of course, she's got some athletes around her that are just like absolute ballers, but to do that across the board. Another one that made me feel so like happy and proud of that staff is that they have a new pitching coach on staff. So of course, Ashley has her hands in the pitchers. But Zach Parsons, who was from Murray State, who used to come to our OGX behind the scenes, which is we would host like a 1 or a 2 day college coach. Sometimes we would have private instructors too. Come to OGX, literally be behind the scenes. We will do some presentations. It's only for like 4 coaches. It's super intimate. We're going to show you how we train, how we coach. It's like this really, he would come to those. That's how we, you know, grew to know him. And now next thing you know, we're on weekly calls dissecting every little thing and talk about a coach who is smart and who is hungry. You know, he's like, I have something to prove. This is my first gig in the SEC. And we had, you know, some of their athletes come to OGX in person over winter break to train like for a week in person. And they're just like, we love Zach. Not just because Zach is like a nice guy, which he is, but it's because they're like, you know, he is smart. He's a great coach. He knows how to talk to us about data, explain it to us, tell us why we're doing what we're doing. You know, they have linked to him so quickly. And I just am like, man, I hope he can register. You know, I said this to him this week in our call, but I hope he can register. Like, you have done a damn good job there. You know, in your very first year, this is a big stage. This is so much information to take in. And, he has been excellent to both his athletes, to the program, in working with Ashley, because our hands are in pitching. Anytime 2 coaches' hands are in pitching, it takes some dynamics there, you know, to be able to make that work. And they have, and it's incredible. And he's a rock star. He's an absolute rock star.
The version of Zach that I first met in August when we were on campus to do the assessments, and the version I got to see at NFCA were just, I think, and Zach, if you're listening, I'm pretty sure I said this to you directly, it was like, confidence looks really good on you. He skyrocketed over the fall through all of the work, you know, weekly with you, and just learning Ashley's systems and just getting his feet settled. And it was really fun to see how much just confidence he grew.
And these programs are not like, they're not like, should we get less information next year?
Right.
Like, this is back to what we talked about with how they are pushing the envelope. South Carolina is in that same conversation. They're like, what else can we have access to? What else now? Like, basically now, the more you start, like, okay, you don't think Ashley Chastain is thinking like, how do we go from number 8 to number 1? Right? I mean, like the same way Trisha went from 16 to 1. So like, where are those gaps? Where are those holes? Where's the information that's going to help me find those? I mean, this is what we're talking about here. And those are 2 programs that I think, you know, it's not that obviously we don't have really great relationships with everyone else, but they have reached such heights this year in a remarkable way. Like, I mean, these are 2 stories. This isn't like, oh, Texas A&M has been in the top 5 for, I mean, it was like these 3 years of the Trisha Ford era have been like, another planet, you know? And again, the same with South Carolina. So those were the 2 in particular that made me cry, because I just felt like, wow, you know, it was just huge. And I think it's a representation of like where the game is headed. We have said in the past, and those coaches have said, you know, at different conferences that we've been at, like, you can't not have information and expect to be great, right? You just can't. I'm not saying you can't win a ball game here and there, but like, you can't make a program great without information. If you can, maybe there's like 1 outlier or 2 schools that do it. I don't know, based on their recruiting, whatever, you know, but you've got to have information. And I just think how extreme their success has been this year is a direct relationship on how much their cultures are built around data, information to make decisions. And that's this is the era of the college game that we're in. So they're a great representation of that.
And not that we don't work directly with Oklahoma, but I was listening to one of the games, whatever, in the last week or so, and they kept commenting about, you know, there was this expectation of Oklahoma this year that because of the seniors they graduated and, you know, just the legacy of that class, that this year was going to be more of a struggle for them. That was the conversation that kept coming up. And all I kept thinking was, you know, there was so much about, like, you know, Patty's magic and being able to coach, you know, underclassmen and bring them along. And I don't, not disagreeing with that. I think the layer underneath of that, though, is like, you know, the systems that they clearly have and utilizing the portal, still development. You still have to get that athlete to adapt to your systems and the way that your team runs things, but also the ability to bring in those underclassmen and have what I'm guessing is a pretty robust, at least hitting development system from what we've seen. But they have a development system. That's the beauty of it, is that, you know, even if you take a risk on a recruit as a junior or a risk on someone in the transfer portal, if you have systems that are rooted in this information, and I think, you know, A&M and South Carolina are great examples that we know very intimately because they reflect and mirror some of our systems, but like other schools have that. Let's not discredit the work that goes into building that infrastructure and just say it's the magic of coaching. Of course, it's the magic of coaching, but the level you're talking about with Trisha and with Ashley, and what I'm assuming that happens at Oklahoma is just these systems and standards of what they expect and the way things are structured, and you said delegated, and that is this blend of like coaching magic and manager. And I think that they're very unique things to be able to do simultaneously and not lose your way in one or the other. I think it's very unique.
Yeah. I'm going to flip us a little bit to athlete and we'll come back to a couple coaches, but I was thinking as you guys were talking, and Ashley, you're, you know, kind of almost, it's like kind of crazy to think of Trisha as being like under, you know, flying under the radar a little bit, even though her team is number one, which is kind of crazy to think about. But one of the I was thinking about Katie Stewart as you were talking, because I think it's something, obviously yesterday we were referencing, like, you know, in our full team, we were talking about constraint-led training and young development. I was picturing Katie Stewart wearing Hello Kitty or whatever she used to wear, Katie, to come train with us when she was 8, you know, and she's trained with us literally her whole career. And I think it's interesting for someone who is having such success at such a high level to be a little under the radar because of all of the things that make Katie amazing, which is she plays whatever position she's needed. She does whatever she's needed. She, you know, when she comes back, we've referenced this before, but like she'll train this summer and toss to a 14-year-old and will just come do all of the things that are just her values, you know, which is work hard, keep trying to get better, keep pushing the envelope of her own development, but in a way that is so humble. And so sometimes at the detriment to like her individual accolades, because it's hard to get accolades when one game you're in left field and one game you're at shortstop and one game you're catching and one game you're at first base, because that, you know, something like, I think she was ranked number one for like utility players, but you know, you don't get the same, you know, you just don't get the same accolades from that. And I think there's an element of her that is, it's just been like unbelievable to watch her grow up and to see her have success in her way, which is, as I said, like as soon as she got back for the winter, she trains, you know, she gets in there. She is willing, maybe not always, Katie, maybe when you were like 13, you would have like thrown your bat at me, but now is willing to really have us push her to fail in there, to expose the weaknesses, to like really attack those things and to do what the team needs at any given moment. She's always been that way. Her family has instilled those values. And I think it's been just like incredible to watch and be a part of. And speaking to Crying last year, I got the opportunity and hopefully will again to go watch her at the World Series. And as they like called her, it's just like, you know, it's a very emotional experience because you know all of the things she puts in on a daily basis to being able to be that person. And it's just been incredible to watch. And, you know, she already like she's finishing out this year and hopefully gets to finish on the big stage again. And also is planning what she's going to do this summer to train, and has set goals and knows she has to keep continuing to climb and get better. And so it's just been incredible to be a part of. And the example of like, this is someone who performs whatever. She's like top 10 of RBIs, and, she performs at such a high level, and who comes and is so willing to sit at the beginning of the summer and say like, where are my holes? Like what do we need to fill and gap? And that
common
is what it's
theme
about.
here for athletes and coaches.
Yeah.
Yes. There was a conversation. I brought this up to Trisha on Monday because like 2 weeks ago, she was like, why am I failing them as a coach with X?
Yeah.
And so we talked about it, and I gave her my thoughts, and we came back, we came up with a plan. And on Monday, I was like, remember when you said, why are you failing them with X? And I was like, well, first of all, you're not, because you're not failing them in anything. So they're ranked number one, but like, I was like, but also I reflected on that, like the fact that you are at the point you're at, and you're like, but that's not good enough. And so that's on me. And
right.
I have to get that where I'm failing them, because there's a space that we're not considering, and I think like that's the deal, right? When you just keep seeing the gaps, and not to a point where you can't see what you're doing well. I mean, of course,
right.
You also celebrate,
right, and not to a degree,
well.
yes, and not to a degree where you like beat yourself up so much that then you can't.
Absolutely, I'm not talking about the extremes.
Yeah,
but this is the common theme with these both coaches and with athletes.
Yeah, I think we've also had a few athletes and examples of athletes who didn't train with us their whole career, but really they had something spark in their college career that then they wanted to turn things around. They wanted to have a different experience. And so they came and trained with us. So Ashley, I'll probably let you maybe speak to an athlete or two who's had that experience and who's now having success. And again, I think you'll hear a lot of the same themes. These are athletes who came to us because they're like, it's not going the way I want for whatever reason. And I'm willing to like, look at that, which is such an important thing.
I would say maybe the top of my list, this is another one that's just like really tugged at my heartstrings this year, is Isabella Vega. Isa is pitcher at UCF, in case you live under a rock this year, because she is just crushing it. She is going to be on a podcast with us hopefully next week once regionals are finished, and talk a little bit about maybe some of the more specifics of her journey. She was a redshirt freshman. She is a redshirt freshman. She redshirted last year. And she came to us, as I think a lot of freshmen, the college world is just so different than the youth world. You think you're so sure of yourself when you go in, and then the college world shakes you in like, is this good enough? Am I that, you just don't know. Your like identity can get rattled a little bit, and it's not always centered around softball either.
Right.
And so she came to do the summer program because she was like, I redshirted this year and I just want to hit the ground running. And I think what was really like, I watched her come to life last year throughout the summer. And I think the reason for that is not because we had a conversation where like I said X and that really hit her soul. Maybe that happened. We can let her tell us that when we get on a podcast with her. But I think we were able to come to her with this lens of like, I have no idea what you did in high school. Frankly, don't care. What I'm looking at right now is like, we know what's good enough, and we know how to take what they do, their tools, and leverage the hell out of them, and teach them to leverage the hell out of them. And we could do that for you here, So like, this isn't a like, we're unsure. Like, let's talk real X's and O's. If you could take this pitch, which breaks like this, and change it to this speed, and throw it at this height and this height, and it's at this spin rate, it does this. Like, this is a rock star tool. And you don't have to think, oh, I only have this, or, like, was that only good because I threw it in high school and it's not here? Like, no. Here we come as these outside people. And we are telling you that this isn't a like, oh, we believe in you, Isa. This isn't some fluff. This isn't some sense of
but
absolutely. But this is not a conversation that's
because of the real things in front of us. Right.
Because of the real information. I'm like, Isa, I didn't even know you yesterday, but you're going to look at me in the eye and I'm going to tell you like, this what is in front of us? This is really good shit that you have. And I know exactly why you were successful at the high school level. And I know exactly why you're going to be great in the college level. And so you need to know that. But you got to make this tool do this. You got to make sure it stays here. You've got to do this. And this is what we're committed to, right? So of course I put a little like Rocky theme music in the background to make sure that that really held, it hit her soul. But it was the real information, right? And so she's like, okay. And so little by little, as we went through her summer program, which she did remotely, she went back to Florida and did remotely. And then we tested her ability to throw. She was in a little bit of a league and tested some things out with some hitters. And by the end of the summer, she was like, I'm feeling good. And just like, it wasn't like, oh, we gave her tools she never had, which has happened before with athletes. This was not the case with Isa. This was us really putting that information in front of her and telling her, like, this tool is great when you're able to control it here, when it's at this spin rate. Here's what that means. Here's how you do that. Here's how you train in order to make sure that's the case. Here's the speeds it needs to be at. And when she gained back that confidence of like, wait a second, what I have is enough. As long as I'm informed, I can't wait to hear from her on a podcast again, hopefully next week, for her to kind of share a little bit, because that was the end of last summer. There's obviously been a lot that's happened. So kudos to her coaching staff there as well, obviously, to like take on a brand new Isa as far as, not her tools necessarily, but like her insides, her presence, what she felt about herself. And like when you watch her throw now, she knows exactly who she is and what she's going after. So she was able to show up this year as a new version of herself because of the work she did in her summer program with us. And then her coaching staff was able to take that Isa and then, take it and run. And she's been incredible this year. So that's a huge one. I just think every time they're like, she's up for freshman of the year. Like, I mean, this is big time, right? And so, like, she's a nominee. And so, like, I'm just like, wow, that story. You think about these conversations that you have one-on-one in an office setting with them, and how they're just like, what they're sharing with you, and how, and like the growth within 1 year for her is just so great. And you know what I want, like, young pitchers to know? And I'm going to talk about Derkowski also in a second. But it's similar. What I would love is for young athletes to like get some insight into these journeys, to see that like you don't just make it once you get recruited. You're going to hit some points in college. Maybe it's early in your career, maybe it's midpoint, maybe it's the end, where things get hard. You start questioning if you're good enough. You start questioning, where did that go? Who am I? And these are examples of athletes that have felt themselves push up against a little bit of a wall in their journey, and they took it in their own hands to go find what they needed, go get the information they needed, and then they made the choice to flip their mindset around to be like, no, I can do this, and they did. And so I just think they're they're inspiring stories for young athletes at the youth level who just, they don't see past like once they can announce where they committed to.
I think there's that journey is like, you come up through the travel ball system where all of your sort of validation if you're good or not right now is basically external coach opinion. It's who you play for. It's, the verbal feedback that you get. You can supplement that with, rankings and showcases and those types of things. But, separate from having the level of information that we collect on our athletes and watching that journey, you're really relying on that coach to tell you if you're good or not. And so I see these patterns of like, if you follow like a really high profile kid who is, top whatever, Gatorade Player of the Year, blah, blah, blah. And they have that freshman year. And sometimes we do see them at some point, but there's a disconnect. It's like all of a sudden they realize, wait a second, I'm looking for that external opinion of the coach, and it's maybe not positive. Maybe I don't have the tools that I think I do, or there's just a mismatch. And I think like a story like Issa's is like, she went back to herself. She was like, wait a second, something's off. She was checking herself internally. She wanted the information. And instead of going and seeking a coach's opinion, not that you're not a coach, obviously, Ash, but she wanted the combo of the coach plus the information. And like that to me is like, it's just such a great example of like figuring it out for yourself and not letting someone external to you be the only source of your value, your worth, your confidence as a player. And like, she's good. I love that she skyrocketed. It's such a great story.
It's a great story. I think last year we reflected on like some of our like most powerful summer program stories. And I was like, Issa, you know, just like, man, I felt like that was really powerful for me. It's just inspiring. It's inspiring to watch someone like take something back for themselves. You said, look in the mirror and feel like they can be the ones in control of what's coming next. And I think I felt very inspired by her by the end of the summer last year. And then that was I had no idea what was going to happen with her career this year. There's so many variables, of course. So now to see that she was able to extend it into so much success, she's a rock star. I'm really proud of her.
Yeah. You want to touch on Derkowski? Obviously, Michigan shaking things up, winning the conference tournament. 2 years in a row, she was conference tournament player. So you can touch to her story a little bit. It's very similar. And she has shared some of it as well. And we have shared some of the things she has shared about the experience. But
Lauren Derkowski is a very similar story. It was a few summers ago. After her freshman year, right? Yeah,
after her freshman year and after her sophomore year, she changed. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, right. But after her freshman year, it's like I think this happens her freshman. Like the success you can have. College level humbles you, right? And not to say she was unsuccessful freshman year, but just generally across the board, like the college world humbles you quite quickly and can send you into the like, am I good enough? As we talked about, she was behind Alex Storako that year also, which was obviously like, that it's tougher to come in and to have someone that like you might start to measure yourself up against someone like, am I good enough? Am I as good as them? Can I be as good as them? And those words never came out of her mouth. But I'm just saying generally, these are all variables that I think send someone to us. And honestly, she came to us because their pitching coach, Jen Brundage, who just a great coach and a great person. She suggested it. Like she was like, I just feel like she doesn't have a great relationship with information. She feels, and I think Dirk would be fine with us sharing this story, but she feels like the information is always pointing out what she's doing wrong, right? So it's the flip side of what we were saying before, getting stuck on the gaps. And pitchers can be like that. Totally. Pitchers are freaks in a great way and in a bad way. And that's what makes them great. I mean, they're just like constantly in there calculating. It's why I always say, wow, talk about two planets. You walk into a bunch of hitters training and they've got music blasted and they're just doing whatever. And the pitchers are little freaks in there. It's silent. And because I'm like, they're all doing the Queen's Gambit, moving their chess pieces on every single pitch, right? Like that's a pitcher's brain, but it can very quickly cross over into a threshold where it's like, oh, this isn't great. And so for Dirk, she was like struggling with information and Jen was like, I feel like you guys can really help her with this summer. And that was that initial summer. And this was not a like, in the first weekend we met, Derkowski was just like, I'm so glad I found you guys. She was just basically like, not in a, like a mean way or a negative way, but basically like, Biggie told me I got to come here and so like, I'm going to try it, but also like, she's a force and I love that about her, and so basically like, I'm not just like sold on how this is going to like help me. And so there was a call. I will never forget it. So that she came in June, there was a call. She's from our area. So she's like local. And so in July where she was back on campus and I hung up the phone and was like, I don't even know who I just talked to because she was like telling me about the data. She was like, it didn't work. Rapsodo didn't set up this day. Can we do a FaceTime so I know it works? And I saw this and I saw that my velocity would look like this, or my spin rates look like this and this and this. It was like talking to me in data language. And I was like, I'm sorry, what happened to you in the last 4 weeks, right? And so I was like, whoa, she on her own, as she should. She did not just take my word for it. On her own, she started to become more open on like how I could really be educated about my data to show me what I'm doing well, why I'm good, but then also expose my gaps. Both live in the same world. And there was this, I'm a weirdo also with dates. I'm pretty sure it was like July 11th.
I don't
3 summers ago.
I don't doubt that date.
I'm serious. It was such a powerful, it might have been July 14th now that I think about it, but it was one of those 2 dates and it was just a really powerful conversation. And I hung up and I was like frozen. I'm like, we're changing this kid. Like I felt this like wave of inspiration. Like she's in. And when someone steps in to player development, and I mean not like puts a toe in, like jumps in, you're like, welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. And I hung up that phone with Dirk that day and I was like, welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. And
well, now she's lit. Like that was, next year they didn't make postseason, right? And so then it was like, okay, we got to get back to where we were. And I think the other thing that has been amazing is not only has she had success in the circle, obviously she's led her team these past few years, and that is amazing, and what she adopted, but also what came out of her that year, I think it's just like she's a leader, and you see it in the way that she gets the team, and the team looks at her and rallies behind her, and her respect for that program and her respect for her coaches. And it's just like that part is
she's so
incredible.
Michigan.
Right. That's the respect for the Michigan jersey. I think of Dirk. That's what I think of.
Michigan. I think she just like is a poster child for Michigan at this point. She is tough as hell. She is like, I will do anything for this program. Culture means, so much. And that second summer when she showed up, she was like, I don't want to be the same version of myself 4 years in a row. So like, what can I add? What can I be? What can I do? And I was just like, man, and so I just think like, she made that decision to like be able to allow data to show her like looking at gaps doesn't mean I don't also have incredible strengths. So she allowed herself to open up, to be able to use information to see that way, to train in a way that was like focused on leveraging strengths, keep filling gaps, to take her toughness, to take her leadership skills, to keep growing those. I just think like, man, this is a case where, I didn't really have the right words on Twitter, X, whatever, when I wanted to like give her a shout out the other day. But I was like, what I really wanted to say was like, this is also a story that I wish we could do like a documentary on when her
30 for 30
is
or
over.
30 for 30.
30 for 30.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, let's start doing 30 for 30s OGX style. And Paul can totally do that. But basically, I would love for young athletes to learn from the Lauren Derkowski story. Like that kid is tough, and she has grown even in just a few years that we've known her, and has pushed herself to grow and has like relit her passion for growth. And I feel like she is a story that could inspire, and it's real, it's raw, and it's real. It isn't just this like, I was so great as a youth pitcher, which she was. Then I went to Michigan and was just always a star. Like there's some nitty gritty details in there that she had to work through, push through, grow through, and she did. And I couldn't be happier for her and the program. There's just so many people on that staff, that coaching staff, on that team that I think are they're just, they embody some really, really great values. And I think that she could teach a lot of athletes some really important lessons. So
we're going to go long, but we got to do one more. We got to do one more, which is Jordy. Because
Jordy.
I feel like we got to wrap our conversation with Jordy. So, Jordan Richwood is what worked for us, chased Ashley around for 3 years, basically.
We didn't have, if we had a system, it was written sideways on a notebook. It was just like,
follow me. Follow me.
It was just like, if you want to learn what we do, you literally can't leave my side because it's not written down anywhere.
But I still remember sitting in the office when we got Rachel Balkovec, who works for the Marlins, Yankees. I don't know. She's in MLB now. And she was doing like a mentorship program at the time, and Jordan was a part of it. And she was like, this woman is looking for opportunities to really grow in the game. And I feel like you guys would be a good match. And she knew we were kind of open to looking at that point. And I remember getting her like cover letter, which is a cover letter. That's hilarious. So it was like, what year is it? Anyways, but I remember sitting in the office, and it was very thoughtful. It was about what she like wanted to learn. And I think what always was so unique about Jordan is just like a willingness to just be, it's the same as, this is the trait of player development. It is a willingness to just be like, I need to grow more. I need to learn more. I don't have the tools I need to be successful in the way I want to if ultimately I go back into the college game. And so like, I'm going to move across the country, and I'm going to follow this woman around.
This crazy ass.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I'm going to follow this woman around and hope I learn enough. And I remember, she was obviously with us for a few years, and just like amazing growth. And she got to be alongside of the growth of the business also. And a lot of amazing things there. But I remember when Maggie was looking and really wanted Jordan. So also testament to Maggie and the program she's building to be like this, this is a slightly unique path for me to go at, probably less so now as we've like become more established. But at the time, like I know generally about you guys and the conversations that she had when she was looking to hire Jordan and what she was looking for in that role, which is a person who's going to come and not just be necessarily like in the traditional way, but it's going to come to take a program that needs developing, that's players need pushed, and who's going to be willing to do that. And I think they made a run, maybe arguably should have been in the postseason, but we'll leave that for other people to discuss. But they made like an incredible run in the Big Ten tournament. They just like continued to climb in that conference. And I think it's just like sometimes when like Jordan will send things, or her dynamic with her pitchers and the nuances she's able to do in a very Jordy way, which I think is incredible. This isn't like she's running around in the bullpen and looks exactly like you would, Ashley, in her personality. She has kept her sort of like authentic personality of how she wants to coach and how she wants to do it, but continues to get, use the data, develop her players, push her pitchers, had some of them come to the summer program last year, like just continues to develop them. And it's been so fun to watch her just like thrive in that environment and be successful and develop players. So we're proud of you, Jordy.
We're so proud. Also, no one calls her Jordy. We made that up.
I think we're the only ones to call her Jordy.
Yeah, it's not a name she goes by, but now it might be when people hear that.
Sorry,
obviously we only have so much time here, but I think of like, I'm also proud of Riker this year. I know that like it's year number one. Obviously we worked with Riker for a long time in Ole Miss. Then he took a gap year in the college coaching world. He took a gap year, and he didn't know it was going to be a gap year. We always knew it was going to be a gap year. And obviously Auburn, they had a really tough schedule this year, but like what he has done with those pitchers and like S.J. Guerin is just like, oh man, he's just done incredible work. It's year number one. So I just think like, man, when we're doing the same podcast next year at the end, like let's celebrate some of our partners and some of our athletes and coaches. You better believe that every year that program is going to keep climbing, not just because of Riker, obviously because of the Malvo effective as well, because they represent the same thing across the board.
Absolutely.
But Riker is a special guy for all of the reasons that we're talking about here. And so he's done amazing things with that pitching staff. And I think like they just need a little bit more time to let that program just keep building, around the coaches that I just think like, man, that's some trio. When it comes to player development, the Malvos and Riker, that is a freaking trio. So, that's another.
Give them a couple years.
So yes. Anyway, we can't just keep calling out every single coach that we think is doing a good job because there are lots of them out there. But I want to mention that one as well because Riker's fresh off of his OGX gap year.
Yeah, should have called it a semester at sea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, semester at sea. Good one.
All right. Well, obviously, as I said, this is like when you're like win a Grammy and we're like, I can't remember.
I can't think of everyone. Yeah.
Can't talk about everyone. There's so many people that we've just had the opportunity to grow alongside of, and they're just having so
across
much
all
impact on the
divisions.
game. And that's really what it's about. Is like it's coaches and players who want to have impact. And they want to have impact in the way that they perform and can help the team. They want to have impact in the way they can develop their players. They just like, I'm pretty sure I shared one of the things of Texas A&M and I was like, winners win. And it's not like it's, this idea of like she just grabs all the best players. And it's just like, there is a trait. And it might not always come in the form of being number one in the country. And it might not always be in the form of like first team All-American for, Katie Stewart because of all the things you said. But like at the end of the day, if I'm going in the trenches, like, a Katie Stewart, Trisha Ford, Ashley Chastain, Riker, like these are the people you want to go to battle with because at the end of the day, they're going to win. And what that means might be different across different levels, but it's because they are so willing to go inward, the Derkowskis of the world. They're so willing to go inward to do what's needed to do that. And it's such a special trait and it is player development. It's what we love about what we do every day. And so it's just been so special to watch and
sports are the best.
Yes.
Man.
And
yes.
Can't wait
these
to
stories like light me on fire in a good way. And obviously watching this weekend. How can we even manage all the games?
Yeah.
Multiple TVs.
I'm
That's
supposed
how I'm
to
going
be
to do it.
managing. I know. My 9-year-old's birthday party this weekend. I'm like, how can we possibly be throwing a birthday
You're like,
party?
you can't have a birthday party.
I know, like all the kids out. Texas A&M is
Why
on,
didn't I plan that better
Yankees
9
are
years
playing.
ago?
Totally.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, yeah, it's a good one. We're really lucky, and we've
So
built
lucky.
it ourselves. So I guess, yeah, what is it? The more risk you're willing to take, the luckier you get. That's an OGX t-shirt. Although I stole that line from somewhere, so we can't do that. But we build our own luck. However, we're very lucky and we're very privileged to get to work and like alongside of a lot of these athletes and coaches, because they're really, they're very, very inspiring. They really are. And
their trust of us is such a privilege. It really is. Their trust of us.
It really is. And like
it's such a
all
privilege.
of the magic of sports that you got when you were an athlete, I sometimes think to myself, like, I'm still surrounded by that. I'm still surrounded by the like power of how sports like create these unbelievable human beings in the world. And all of these stories we told today are just some examples of that. So,
yep. All right. Well, here's to the postseason and also to Beyonce. So thank you.
And also
Yeah.
to Beyonce.
Great.
Which I will bet.
Have a
All
great
right.
time.
Until next week.